The chill of King's Landing's morning mist still clung to the stone walls of the Red Keep when Lord Eddard Stark made the decision that would change the fate of the Seven Kingdoms forever. He stood alone in the Tower of the Hand, Robb's letter clenched in his fist, his heart battling between honor and survival. He had tried to do it the right way, declaring Stannis the rightful heir, hoping the realm would bend to law. But King's Landing didn't play by the rules of honor. The crown had become a battlefield of lies, and Eddard Stark had seen firsthand how truth had no place in the Game of Thrones. Joffrey had seized the throne with Cersei's blessing, and the Goldcloaks, whom Ned had foolishly trusted, had betrayed him. But unlike the last time, Ned had prepared. He had expected Cersei's treachery, Varys's whispers, Petyr Baelish's betrayals. He had counted every risk. This time, he had made alliances in the shadows. When the Lannisters moved to arrest him, the Stark men, aided by a dozen bannermen from the Vale and Riverlands, who had slipped into the city in disguise, turned the trap into a bloodbath. Littlefinger's throat was slit in his own brothel. The Goldcloaks found their commanders dead in their quarters. Chaos erupted in the Red Keep at this time. It was Ned Stark who held the sword. He did not do it for ambition. He did it for survival, for Sansa and Arya, for the North, for justice that the Seven Kingdoms refused to give him. And so, in front of a hastily gathered council of lords, still loyal to Robert's name, Renly Baratheon, said Barristan Selmy. Even Lord Hoster Tully via Raven Eddard Stark stood, tired but resolute. "I name myself king," he declared, his voice steady but heavy, "not for love of power, but to protect the realm from the lies that fester in the throne room. The Lannisters are traitors. Stannis has not come. The kingdom needs justice, and I will give it." The hall fell silent. Even Renly, who had his own ambitions, saw the sense in it. Ser Barristan, who had seen too many kings, knelt first. Then came Renly, then the others. Not because they saw a warrior or a tyrant, but because they saw a man too honest for the game, but finally willing to play it. Word spread like wildfire. In the north, Robb Stark was crowned as Warden of the North by the bannermen before he could even finish marching. The Riverlands declared their support. The Vale, with Lysa Arryn's reluctant blessing, joined in. The storm had begun. Cersei and Joffrey were dragged from the throne room. Ned gave them no torture, no cruelty, just judgment. He spared Tommen and Myrcella, children innocent of their mother's games, but Cersei was imprisoned. Joffrey had drawn his sword on the guards, screaming that he was king. It ended with a dagger in his heart, delivered not by Ned, but by Arya, who had slipped into the throne room unnoticed. The moment haunted Ned every night after, but it was done. The Iron Throne was no longer Lannister gold. It belonged to ice and honor now. But peace was not to last in Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon, furious and humiliated, declared Ned a usurper. "The throne is mine by right of birth," his raven declared. "Stark is no king, he is a traitor." And in the east, the flames of a new fire were rising. Daenerys Targaryen had hatched her dragons, and beyond the wall, shadows moved in silence. Ned had claimed the throne to stop chaos, but he had only just lit the match. The days after Ned Stark's unexpected coronation were uneasy. King's Landing was quiet, but not peaceful. The scent of blood still clung to the walls, and whispers crept through every alley and corridor, like rats in the dark. The Iron Throne, with its jagged blades and cursed history, now bore the weight of a man who had never wanted to sit upon it. Ned moved through the halls of the Red Keep like a soldier still in the middle of a battle. His crown simple, silver, northern-made rested on his brow with the same discomfort as guilt. He had not forgotten Arya's hands, trembling but firm, as she drove a blade into Joffrey's chest. She did it for Sansa, for their house, for herself, but she had still killed. A child killing another child. Even if the boy was a monster that haunted him more than the war drums now echoing from Dragonstone. Stannis had not waited. Within a fortnight he had raised his banners, naming Ned a traitor and an oathbreaker. Ravens screamed across Westeros, carrying two truths, one written in ice, one in fire. Stannis declared himself king by right. Ned claimed it by necessity. Renly had remained in the capital, cleverly siding with Ned for the time being. But his eyes were sharp, calculating. Ned could feel his ambition hanging like a dagger behind every conversation. Renly smiled to Isley, laughed too often, and never missed a chance to gather new allies. Ned knew that support from the Tyrells came not for love of House Stark, but because Margaery still had no crown. Renly intended to fix that. Meanwhile, the North stirred restlessly. Robb Stark, barely more than a boy but already a leader, had sent a raven saying, "The North remembers. I will march when you call." Catelyn had written, to her words filled with worry and subtle anger. "You should have come home," she wrote. "This throne will consume you." Even within the Red Keep, peace was a ghost. The court was divided. Varys remained, slippery as ever, speaking in riddles. "King Ned," he would say with a mocking tilt, "you wear the crown better than most. But the game, my lord, is not played by swords alone." Seir Barristan was loyal, as was Renly for now, but the council was thin. The Tyrells had their own agenda. The Lannisters had scattered Tywin retreating to Casterly Rock, already gathering armies. Jaime, still imprisoned, refused to speak a word. Cersei sat in her cell like a viper waiting for her time, and amidst all this, Sansa, her eyes had changed. She no longer dreamed of knights and songs. The girl who once loved Joffrey was gone. Now she sat silently beside her father in council meetings, listening, learning. She had seen the face of love twisted into cruelty, and now she learned the sharp language of power. Arya was worse. She would not stay in the keep. She spent her days in the training yard, fighting boys twice her size, bruising her knuckles and refusing to cry. Ned tried to speak to her, to comfort her, but Arya only asked him one question. "Do you regret letting me do it?" He had no answer. Outside the walls, things were growing darker. Refugees poured into King's Landing from the countryside. Rumors of strange things in the woods, of villages abandoned, of cold that came too early. The Night's Watch had sent a raven too, but Ned hadn't yet read it. It sat unopened on his desk. Its black wax seal a quiet reminder that some enemies didn't march under banners. They came with the snow, and then came the worst news of all. A raven from Pentos, Seir Jorah, Mormont's seal, a girl with silver hair and dragons had crossed the Red Waste. The Dothraki had followed her, and she had named herself Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Ned stared at the message, the words inked in fire and fear. 3 dragons, a Targaryen reborn, one mad king had almost destroyed the realm. Now another had returned. The North had a saying, "Winter is coming." But Ned Stark, now king, finally understood what it truly meant. Winter wasn't just the cold. It was everything, and it was already here. The war drums echoed louder now. From the walls of Dragonstone to the green fields of the Reach, Westeros was boiling. Stannis Baratheon had set sail, with his small but disciplined force and the flaming faith of R'hllor at his back. He moved to claim Storm's End, rallying the Stormlands under his banner. His letters raged against Ned Stark's claim. He called it an abomination, a betrayal of Robert's legacy. And behind his fury burned the Red Woman, Melisandre, whose whispers of fire and shadow had given him a god in the capital. Ned's rule became a balancing act on a knife's edge. Every sunrise brought a new problem, a new betrayal, a new fear. The people of King's Landing were restless. Food was running low. Tyrell shipments were delayed, deliberately or not. Whispers of Lannister sympathizers filled the alleys. Gold cloaks, still loyal to Janos Slynt, had been quietly dealt with, but their influence had spread deep. Ned met each day with the patience of a man who had stared down worse storms, but even his northern resolve was thinning. His small council was crumbling. Renly grew bolder in court, often speaking before the king, addressing lords with the confidence of one who believed the throne was only temporarily misplaced. And yet, Ned could not move against him, not while Stannis marched, not while Daenerys Targaryen gathered support across the narrow sea. News from Essos was troubling. The Girl Queen had not just survived, she had thrived. Khal Drogo was dead, yes, but his Khalasar had not scattered. They had bent the knee to her, some by fear of dragons, some by faith. The Dothraki called her the Mother of Flames. Slavers feared her. Free cities debated whether to oppose or appease her. And now the Iron Bank had opened its doors too. Her envoy, a dragon queen with gold and fire. She was coming, still. Ned's focus remained on the immediate threat. Stannis, a raven, arrived from Storm's End. The castle had fallen without blood. The lords within opened their gates to Stannis, driven by fear of the Red Priestess. Melisandre had lit a great pyre outside the castle walls. They burned idols of the Seven, and a man, to Sir Courtenay Penrose, who refused to kneel. The smoke from his body had risen high into the sky, and Stannis had knelt before it. The Stormlands belonged to him now. Robb Stark had sent word to I ride south, he wrote, but I will not fight for a kingdom that forgets the North. Ned knew what that meant. The boy was already flirting with independence, even if he didn't say it outright. He wanted his father safe, his sisters protected, but he did not want a crown made of fire and ash, not if it cost the North its soul. Catelyn arrived soon after. Her face was worn from worry, and her words cut deeper than any sword. "You've become a king, Ned," she said, standing before the Iron Throne. "But at what cost? You've lost Arya to blood. Sansa has become a woman too soon. And Robb now speaks of war like it's breakfast." "I did what I had to," he replied, voice low. "Joffrey would have burned this city. Stannis would bring fire priests to our gates. I couldn't let that happen." She looked at him with sorrow, not anger. "You always believed in honor, Ned, but now you sit on a throne made of lies. Can you even tell the difference anymore?" That night, Ned didn't sleep. He walked the battlements alone. Below, the city was dark. Behind him, his daughters dreamed uneasy dreams. In the dungeons, Cersei waited, still silent. And far across the sea, a girl with dragon's blood looked to Westeros with fire in her eyes. Then, as dawn broke, the raven came. Black seal, the wall. He opened it slowly. "Winter is no longer coming," it read. "It is here, and it walks." Ned Stark, King of Westeros, stared out into the grey horizon, knowing at last that his crown meant nothing, not when death itself had begun to march. The snow had started falling early that year, even in the south. Light flakes drifted through the air like whispers of doom, melting on the stone streets of King's Landing, but never vanishing from the minds of those who saw them. To most, it was nothing but an odd weather shift. But to Ned Stark, it was an omen. The letter from the wall had confirmed his worst fears. The White Walkers had returned. He summoned the small council immediately. The dead are moving beyond the wall. He told them, his voice calm, grave, like a man announcing his own sentence. We must send aid to the Night's Watch. Men, supplies, dragonglass if we can find it. Renly scoffed. Dead men, frozen shadows. Forgive me, your grace, but we have a very real war marching toward us. Stannis is not a myth. He is at our gates. The wall protects us all, Ned replied coldly. Ignore it now, and we will all freeze together. Seer Barristan backed him. The Night's Watch has stood for thousands of years. If they call for help, we must answer. But the others were less convinced. Lords from the Reach and Westerlands argued over who should fund the supplies. The Tyrells offered grain, but no men. Renly suggested forming a southern alliance to secure the throne before dealing with legends from the north. Ned ended the meeting in frustration, knowing full well the danger would not wait for their politics. That night, he stood alone in the crypts below the Red Keep, not in mourning but to think. He missed Winterfell, its cold stone, its silence. Down here, the air was damp and stale, nothing like the crisp frost of the north. He stared at the empty tombs and thought of Jon Snow. He hadn't heard from Jon in weeks. The boy had gone with Lord Commander Mormont beyond the wall. The last ravens said they'd found abandoned villages, slaughtered animals, signs of something unnatural, then silence. And now this warning. Catelyn entered quietly. She had not visited the crypts since arriving. You look tired, she said softly. I feel it. You were never meant for this place, Ned. You wear that crown like a wound. I wear it because no one else would stop the bleeding. She touched his hand. I know, but even kings need help. He met her eyes, and for a moment, the wall around him cracked. I'm losing them, Cat. Robb wants independence. Arya, she's colder than I've ever seen her. Sansa barely speaks. I don't even know if Jon is alive. Catelyn hesitated. Then bring them back to you, before you lose them all to war and winter. He wanted to, desperately, but war had already come. Scout arrived the next day with news that turned the Red Keep into a hornet's nest. Stannis had crossed Blackwater Bay. His fleet had landed near Driftmark, backed by Sel's-words from Lys and a handful of fanatics in red robes. His army was smaller than expected, but tightly organized. And with him, Melisandre, whose influence grew with every flame she lit. Worse still, Tywin Lannister had moved. Word came from the west. Casterly Rock had raised its banners. Jaime had escaped captivity with the help of a bribed guard and returned to his father. The lion was roaring again. 3 wars. 1 kingdom, and then, just before dusk, a raven landed on the high tower. This one bore no sigil. Its message was simple, but it chilled Ned more than anything else that day. She sails west. 3 words. Daenerys Targaryen had left Essos. She was coming. Ned gathered his children that evening. They sat together in the great hall, just the 5 of them. I don't know what tomorrow brings, he told them, but I want you all to remember this. We are Starks. We do not kneel to fear. We do not break for fire or ice. We stand. Arya's hand reached for his without hesitation. Sansa nodded slowly. Even Bran, who had remained mostly quiet since coming to King's Landing, whispered, "The wolves are strong when they're together." Ned smiled faintly, and far beyond the sea, dragons cried into the wind. The city of King's Landing had begun to change. Under Ned Stark's rule, order had replaced the Lannister corruption, but fear had crept in just as quickly. Soldiers patrolled the streets, not just to guard, but to prevent panic. Food was rationed. Blacksmiths worked day and night, reforging old blades. The people murmured of 3 coming wars, but it was the 4th, silent and slow, that would devour them all. Winter's breath was already here. In the north, Robb had reached Moat Cailin, sending word south. "The north remembers," he wrote, "but we will not bleed for a crown that forgets the wall." It was clear. He would not move further until Ned committed more to the Night's Watch. Ned sat at the war table, flanked by maps of wet, littered with carved figures representing friend and foe. Every corner of the realm trembled now. In the east, Daenerys had landed in the Stormlands with a small force no more than 5,000, but they had dragons. Real dragons. Seer Barristan confirmed it. The skies over Griffin's Roost were blackened by wings. In the west, Tywin gathered men in the Riverlands, sweeping through the Tullylands with ruthless precision. Edmure was barely holding Riverrun. Catelyn's eyes had gone cold when the news arrived. "My brother will die alone if we do not act." But the most immediate threat was Stannis. His fleet now occupied Dragonstone and parts of the Blackwater Bay. His men had burned statues of the Seven across the Stormlands, replacing them with flaming hearts, and at the center of his camp, the Red Priestess whispered of destiny and kingship. "She has him convinced he's chosen," Renly warned during council, "and men follow those who believe their own lies. He's not wrong to believe it." Seer Davos admitted quietly, having been captured in a skirmish and brought before Ned. "He is Robert's brother. He is a man of law." Ned turned to him. "And yet you serve me now." "I serve peace," Davos replied. "And if Stannis continues down the path he's on, there will be no peace, only fire and death." Ned allowed him to remain, to advise. The Night's Watch sent a second raven. "Hardhome has fallen. The dead do not burn. Send men, or we all fall." This time, Ned didn't hesitate. He ordered 500 men, north-led by Benjen Stark, who had returned briefly from the wall with haunting stories and a face that looked like it had seen the abyss. "They don't die," Ned Benjen had whispered. "They just keep coming. And they're smart." The war was failing, but the lords of the south were blind to it. They saw only dragons, thrones, and fire. Sansa approached him one night, her steps graceful but firm. "Father," she said, "I want to speak with Queen." Ned was stunned. "She is our enemy. She is a Targaryen, yes. But she was a girl sold to a warlord and came out with dragons. She has more claim than I ever thought Joffrey did. She might listen to reason." "You want to parley?" "I want to survive," she said. "And I want my people to survive. Maybe that starts with talking instead of killing." Ned saw in her the spark of Catelyn, but also something colder, sharper, something forged by the pain she'd endured. He nodded slowly. "Then you will go to her, with Seer Barristan," Arya protested. "You're sending her to a dragon queen." "She's right," Ned said. "If there's even a chance to avoid this war, ... we take it." Meanwhile, ravens arrived with news of Jon Snow. He lived, but the letter was brief. Sent not by him, but Samwell Tarly. Jon had ventured into the far north with a small band and hadn't returned. They were searching for something, some old power hidden in the frost, and far beyond the wall. The Night King stood watching the south, his army swelling with every village he crushed in silence. Fire was coming from the east, death from the north, and, in the middle, the man who never wanted a crown sat with his head in his hands, knowing that no matter who won Westeros was already dying. Sansa's ship left the harbor under a pale sky, its sails white as bone. With her went Seer, Barristan Selmy, and a small escort under banners of truce. The mission was clear. Speak to Daenerys Targaryen, gauge her intentions, and if possible, delay the firestorm. But Ned Stark knew better than to trust in peace. Peace, in Westeros, was a word spoken only before betrayal. In the throne room, he sat alone more often now. The seat of swords mocked him. Every steel edge whispered of the lives it had taken, the blood it had drunk. He hadn't claimed it for power, but power was its price. Renly was gone vanished with the Tyrell host in the night. They declared him king 2 days later from Highgarden, crowning him with Margaery at his side. King of the South, they called him. The realm was now torn in 4, Stannis in the east, Daenerys in the Stormlands, Renly in the Reach, and Ned in King's Landing. The war had begun in full. Reports flooded. In Tywin had taken Harrow. Stannis had torched a Lannister fleet in Blackwater Bay with wildfire, and Daenerys, she had sacked Storm's End. The dragons had not burned it, they had frightened the soldiers so completely. Many had surrendered before the first roar. Her army grew with every step. But it was the north that troubled Ned the most. Robb had declared independence. The raven came as blunt as steel. The north will be ruled by no crown but its own. We do not recognize any king but the king in the north. Ned did not weep. He simply stared at the words until they blurred. His son, his proud, stubborn son, had done what Ned never could. Chosen the north over the realm. Perhaps he was right, but it shattered something in Ned's heart nonetheless. Arya had taken to wearing armor now. She rode with the guards, trained with the soldiers, and slept with Needle under her pillow. She had not spoken of Joffrey since the day she killed him, but Ned saw the guilt in her eyes. She smiled less, laughed never. Then came Sansa's raven. She had met Daenerys. She does not hate you, Sansa wrote, but she will not yield. She says you wear a throne soaked in her family's blood. Her dragons grow restless, and she speaks of destiny. Ned folded the letter carefully. Destiny. He had heard that word too often, first from Robert, then from Stannis, now from a Targaryen girl raised in exile, walking through fire with beasts of legend. Destiny did not care for truth. It only cared for fire and death. The next day, the sky darkened, not with snow, with wings. 3 shadows crossed the city as Daenerys made her move. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion names, now etched in fear. They did not attack, not yet. They circled the Red Keep as a warning, a message, and at their heart, riding Drogon, was the Queen herself. Ned ordered the gates closed. That night, he met with his war council for the last time. We cannot fight dragons, Davos said plainly. Not here. We hold the city. Renly's former allies protested. We hold nothing if she burns it, Ned replied. And then, without a word, he made his decision. At dawn, Ned Stark climbed the steps of the Red Keep alone. He stood before the Iron Throne and did not sit. Instead, he knelt. A northern king surrendering, not out of fear, but to save what remained. He sent a raven with one line. I will yield my crown if the realm survives. Daenerys arrived 3 days later. There was no battle, only fire in the sky, and a pact, written not in blood but in loss. Ned returned to Winterfell not as a king, but as a father. Arya came with him. Sansa remained in the capital, beside the Dragon Queen. Robb ruled the North Dot, and far beyond their lands, the wall fell. The Night King marched south, unchallenged, because in the end, while men fought over thrones, the dead marched without pause. The Game of Thrones had ended, but the real war had just begun.